In the highlands of Anatolia, the stones of Hattusa whisper of an empire long forgotten. The Hittites, masters of stone and steel, once ruled these lands with fear and law. From their plateau stronghold, they forged a kingdom that rivaled Egypt and Babylon. Their kings from Libarna to Suppiluliuma built an empire of warriors and treaties. Here, the first whispers of iron were shaped into weapons that changed the world. Chariots thundered across the plains, carrying the Hittite war machine into legend. Their gods of storm and sun stood eternal guardians of empire and faith. And at Kadesh, they would clash with the Pharaoh himself in a battle for the ancient world. It was in these Anatolian highlands that the seeds of an empire first took root. At Hattusa, they carved their capital into stone, a fortress of power and faith. Libarna rose as the first great king, forging unity from scattered lands. He bound nobles and warriors into one realm loyal to the throne of Hattusa. The Hittites marched out their armies, pushing through mountains and valleys. Through conquest, Libarna's men brought neighboring lands under Hittite rule. His successor, Hattusili, carried the empire's banners into war. Conquered cities bent their knees, swelling the might of the new kingdom. Wealth flowed into Hattusa, a capital rising in stone and power. Here they carved their words into clay laws, treaties, and chronicles of kings. The Hittite tongue, an ancestor of our Indo-European languages, was given form in clay. In court, oaths were sworn by the gods of storm and sun-binding lords to their king. Through trade, their wealth spread far, tying Anatolia to the world beyond. Their ambitions stretched further toward Syria, Babylon, and the great powers of the age. Amid war and conquest, festivals bound the people together under one crown. From these gates, the Hittites stepped onto the world stage, a rising power of the Bronze Age. From their forges, the Hittites began to master iron, the metal of empires. Their war chariots, swift and deadly, became the hammer of Hittite power. Legions of warriors carried the lion banners into foreign lands. Against the Mitanni, the Hittites proved their chariots could rule the battlefield. City after city fell to the relentless advance of their armies. Even mighty Babylon sent envoys wary of Hittite might. Through marriage, they bound rivals into allies, weaving power by blood and oath. Suppiluliuma, the great strategist, extended Hittite reach across the Near East. Their empire was a tapestry of nations: Syrians, Mesopotamians, Anatolians, all bound to Hattusa. Through oaths, sworn to their gods, distant rulers became vassals of the Hittite throne. Triumphant, their armies returned to Hattusa, celebrated as the masters of war. Defeated foes filled Hattusa's squares, reminders of the empire's strength. Their iron weapons gave them an edge against the bronze armies of the age. Wealth from vassals and allies poured into the capital. War councils plotted campaigns that would shake the ancient Near East. Even Egypt, their rival, was drawn into uneasy diplomacy. Victories were not just won in battle, but celebrated in the heart of the empire. From Anatolia to Syria, their empire stretched across the lands of kings. Their treaties bound nations written in clay, sealed by the lion of Hattusa. The Hittites now stood among the giants of their age, an empire of iron chariots and diplomacy. Suppiluliuma rose to power, a king who would make the Hittites supreme. He gathered armies greater than any king before him. His war chariots became the scourge of Syria and beyond. Syria fell city by city, Aleppo among the first to yield. Suppiluliuma stood victorious. Syria bowed to his might. The Hittites now clashed directly with Egypt, the other titan of the age. Even Pharaoh himself was forced to reckon with Suppiluliuma's advance. From Amarna came a desperate letter, an Egyptian queen pleading for a Hittite prince. She begged, "Send me your son that I may take him as my husband." A Hittite prince set forth, but he would never reach Egypt alive. The plot was betrayed, and the young prince was slain on the road. Suppiluliuma's fury shook the court. Egypt had betrayed his son. Yet through war and intrigue, trade flowed under Hittite control. Ugarit's harbors swelled with goods bound for Hattusa. Carchemish became a jewel of their empire, controlling trade and tribute. They built walls and gates adorned with lions and gods. Their storm god Teshub and sun goddess Hebat stood eternal in stone. In their temples, priests raised smoke to the gods of storm, and Sunday, they honored Ishtar, goddess of love and war, among their many deities. At banquets, power was displayed in gold, wine, and feasts. Beside him, Queen Puduhepa steered alliances with wisdom and grace. Their diplomats carried treaties across kingdoms, binding allies and vassals. From Anatolia to the Levant, their borders stretched farther than ever before. At its zenith, the Hittite realm glimmered like fire under moonlight supreme across Anatolia and the Syrian roads of trade. In 1274 BCE, two empires marched toward destiny at Kadesh. King Muwatalli II commanded the Hittite host, awaiting his rival from the Nile. Pharaoh Ramses II rode at the head of his chariots, the sun blazing above him. Between them lay Kadesh, a fortress city on the Orontes. Muwatalli laid his trap, hiding divisions north of the river. Ramses' scouts rode ahead, but spies and misinformation clouded their path. Tricked by deserters, Ramses believed the Hittites were far away. But the Hittite host waited in silence, hidden by groves and hills. The Egyptian camp relaxed, unaware that death waited nearby. With a signal, wheels would thunder and the trap would spring. As the sun lowered, tension crackled across both camps. Suddenly, the Hittite chariots thundered forth, crashing upon the Egyptian camp. The ambush shattered Ramses' camp in a storm of wheels and dust. But Ramses himself leapt into the fray, rallying his scattered men. The Egyptians countercharged their own chariots, slamming into the Hittite ranks. On the plain of Kadesh, thousands of chariots clashed in the greatest battle of their age. Infantry surged into the fray, spears and shields locked in deadly combat. The plain shook beneath wheels and hooves, the clash of giants. At first, the Hittites broke through scattering divisions before them. But Ramses the warrior pharaoh stemmed the tide with his own hand. As the sun set, neither side had won. The day ended in weary stalemate. Thousands lay fallen, the price of glory paid in blood and dust. From the blood of Kadesh came words of peace written into clay and papyrus. It was the world's first recorded peace treaty, an enduring legacy of Kadesh. The Hittite laws were practical, favoring compensation over death. Disputes were settled with fines or livestock, not blood. At the top stood the king guardian of order and law. Below him, nobles held wealth and influence in council. The army stood disciplined soldiers beneath officers, beneath king. Most were farmers tied to land and harvest. At the bottom were slaves bound by conquest or debt. Daily life revolved around hearth harvest and household. At Yazilikaya, their gods marched forever in carved procession. Religion bound their world storm, sun, and the gods of battle. Artisans carved lions and gods into stone guardians of the city. Scribes kept the records, laws, treaties, myths on clay. Their tongue, the earliest Indo-European language, survives in these signs. Millennia later, scholars unlocked their language from silent clay. Their craftsmen shaped clay, bronze, and cloth into daily life and trade. Music and dance echoed through festivals of gods and kings. Even the humble feasted, honoring gods with food and drink. Their cloth and craft carried Hittite life into every home. In stone and song, their gods still march under Anatolia's stars. Their laws, their gods, their words, echoes of a civilization carved in fire and stone. From the sea came new enemies, the mysterious sea peoples. Their raids set fire to coasts and farms alike. Even fortress walls strained under the endless assaults. Syria, jewel of their empire, slipped from Hittite hands. Internal strife splintered the court, nobles turned on one another. A fragile throne could no longer hold the weight of empire. Desertion spread, the once mighty army crumbled. The treasury was bare, gold and silver had vanished. Famine and war drove the people into anger against their rulers. Conspiracies grew in the shadows of the palace. Vassals broke free, defying the once mighty empire. Storms gathered within and without as the empire tottered. Crops withered the land, no longer fed its people. Famine hollowed the eyes of mothers and children. Earth itself trembled, adding ruin to hunger and war. Even the gods' houses fell silent, abandoned in despair. Trade withered markets, once rich, stood silent and bare. Families abandoned homes, fleeing a dying empire. Flames devoured Hattusa, heart of the Hittite world. The throne of kings stood empty, its banners torn. Only fragments of a people wandered into the night. By 1200 BCE, Hattusa was silent, its empire gone. The lions of Hattusa now guarded only echoes. The Hittite Empire vanished into the night of history. The Hittites pioneered diplomacy, carving treaties into clay. They set the foundations of international law and negotiation. Their laws tempered justice with mercy, influencing centuries to follow. Today, Hattusa stands as a World Heritage Site of humanity. The lions of Hattusa still guard their fallen empire. The Treaty of Kadesh, history's first peace accord, endures in clay. Their tongue, first of the Indo-European family, speaks again through scholars. Their gods remain etched in stone, untouched by time. Ruins whisper of power that once rivaled Egypt and Babylon. Though their empire crumbled, their ideas endured. They shaped the rules of war, peace, and diplomacy for centuries.